here's what I'd like to say. I don't know why it didn't function, because we practiced it many times, but what I do know is we can talk about this very briefly and move on. And any of you that sign up with your name on the sign-in list, if you haven't already, please do. We can send this link out to you, and then you'll have this for yourself and others. In a nutshell, the ACE study showed that the burdens we bore around our whole body being stressed out and responding to stress down in our survival brain, over time, as we're adults, can make us sick. And if we're able to wick that stress away, let it move off of us, then it doesn't have to. But if we don't let that stress or trauma roll away or get resolved, what we find is that our little brains and our body, literally all the different parts of our body, systems of our body, are working harder than they need to, because I'm running from a bear all the time, except there's no bear behind me, right? And the brain didn't know that. And so it leaves us getting sick when we're young adults and older adults from things that are stress related. And this has really a lot to do with the way our mental health and behavior work as well. But it's also just as true about things like COPD or type 2 diabetes or cancer or whatever. So for some of us, it's pretty intense, because it's like, whoa. What they do is they outline 10 different things that can happen in the household that we're a part of, not necessarily even to us, before we're 18, and you see what those 10 things are there. And then we get a point for each one of those. So the original study was a scale of 0 to 10. And that is complicated, because I don't know about you, but I start doing the math for myself, for people I love, for kids I've worked with, for my sister-in-law who I didn't send the email to. And that can be tricky. So we like to nestle this in with some really great information that is protective factors make a huge difference in whether our body carries the burden of the hard things that happen or not. And there's all this hope that you guys are living and growing and holding related to these different protective factors. Here's another set of even other things beyond the original study, which was 17,000 people. And it was, through really big, great science. And they've since come up with another 7 that they've added to it. But what's important to me is that we wind up noticing that regardless of what happened to us or others in our community or folks we love when they were little, we can be well. And that our ACE score doesn't define who we are or how we're going to live in terms of our health or our health outcomes. So you guys are familiar with how a little bit of stress can be healthy for us. It'll help us get that degree and finish school, right? And tolerable stress, if buffered by supportive relationships, can be okay. My parents got divorced when I was 3. It was a really hard time. My sweet little body didn't know what to do, and they didn't have Miralax back in 1972, so excuse me at lunch, but I had to drink mineral oil for about a year with orange juice, because my little stress system was like, yikes, it's really hard at my house, right? That was one of my ACEs. Another one is that my dad was mentally ill, which is why it didn't work for my mom to stay married to him, even though he's a great guy and really a brilliant man and a kind man. So those are 2 ACEs out of 10 that I have. And I offer that just to say this is all of us, right? But I lived tolerable stress, even though it was a hard year. And toxic stress is when those cushioning relationships aren't there. How does ACEs fit with school? Look at this. A kid who has 3 or more ACEs is 2.5 times more likely to fail a grade. We're going to have lower standardized tests, language difficulties, much more likely to get suspended or expelled, often designated towards special education more frequently, even though that may not be their cognitive reality. But if my brain is mostly offline, you're going to put me in special ed because I need some containment and I'm not able to learn at the rate that I could if I were here, right? And they have poorer health. I want to introduce to you briefly Missy. Bartlett, who is my colleague and friend, and she and I are both resiliency educators, and she's doing it here in Mitchell County Schools. So I want her to just talk with you for 1 second about what you're doing. And I'll carry forward.
I'm very thankful to get to be here today with you all, and I'm so proud to be a part of Mitchell County Schools and a community that does reach out to the community for the greater good of the students. I am the alternative school teacher at Mitchell High School, and it's been a long time in the coming for me. I'm very excited to be there. One of my students actually told Mr. Woody and Dr. Franklin that it was a little disturbing that I liked school so much. But I really do, and like Suzanne, I'm a person of faith, and when I first took this position, I wanted my assistant to understand where I was coming from and what my personal philosophy in education was, because he looks 12 and made me feel really old. And so I kept going over and over and over in my head. I'm like, how can I explain to him? I don't want him to think I'm just this pushover, this softie. But I wanted him to work with the kids with a kind heart and a gentle hand. So the best way that I could come up with to explain it to him is because I'm a Christian and my faith is what has made me resilient in my lifetime. I told him, I said, you know, I get up every day, and for me, I try to do my absolute best to be a witness for the Lord and let the community and the people that come into my life know that I truly do love the Lord and I'm not ashamed of it. And I said, but even at the best of that, I fail him every day. I either do something that I should not do, or I don't do something that I should do. And I said, so I feel like for me, it is the absolute least that I can do to extend that courtesy to these kids. Because we know if you are coming to the alternative school, there's been a lot of baggage in your life. That's the reality of it. But you know what, when you come in my door, you got a clean slate. I'm not happy that maybe you cussed your teacher out upstairs, but that's between you and that teacher and administration. We will have a conversation about what would have been a better approach to let her or him know that you didn't particularly like whatever was going on. But that's not my fight. I'm here to help you get back online.
Probably you had to be here if you did something like that, right? So we got to bring it back in, and that's how you're using these tools.
That's how I'm using these tools every day with the students at the high school and building those connections, because that has been the one thing. My room is like a 3-ring circus in the mornings. Kids that have been there and have left come back. They're like, you got to snack, you got to hang out, you got to see what's going on. So it is the connections that have really helped me to be successful with the students at the high school. So I guess that's me and what I do in a nutshell.
So we're so grateful that you know these tools we're talking about that we're heading towards right now, and that you're using them, and that we're using them for ourselves, not just our kiddos. All right.